Okay, hello everybody. We'll let everyone trickle in here before we get started.
It's a
And
lot
we've
of
got assume a lot of people are here from last night, right, Kevin?
yeah.
Okay. Mm.
We've got a lot of people trickling into day two of our appeals boot camp.
And now they met with you. Did you meet with this group last night?
I did. It was me and JP last night, and admittedly,
Okay.
I was not supposed to be here tonight, but we have so much fun presenting together that I
True
decided
story.
it is true.
Okay.
I decided to come back.
All right. Do you want me to start? I guess I'll introduce myself since you guys know Kevin. Everybody, my name is Dan Maga. I am one of the pros at College Aid Pro, and a little background on myself. I'm in the Chicagoland area and been working with families on helping them through the financial side of paying for college since 2004. So a little over 20 years of working with families and helping them figure out how they're going to pay for their kids' college education. And tonight, talking about appeals, that's obviously a big part of that process too. So, um, I don't want to say I've seen it all, but
Uh,
I think between me and Kevin, we've got pretty close to it. So, hopefully we'll be able to give you guys a lot of great information tonight, as a way to get you some more discounts on the crazy cost of college here for your kids.
I think it's so fair to say families who follow us pay less for college, and this is like a really, really, really big part of paying less for college. I'll just, for anyone who wasn't here last night, I'm Kevin Murphy. I'm one of the college planning experts here at CAP, and I've been doing it not nearly as long as Dan here. I've been doing it since 2018. Worked with a lot of families since then, and yeah, I'm very fortunate. I love what I do. Got into it from financial services, and I wouldn't change a single thing. But why don't we kick it off, and we'll see how we do with screen sharing tonight, um, and then we'll go from there.
All right, let's see if I can figure this out. Here we go. We're trying a new thing tonight, people, so just bear with me.
A little patience, everyone, patience.
You'd think we'd be a Zoom expert by now, but
This
okay.
was perfect.
We look good?
Yeah, and your screens are good.
Yep, I'm good. I
Perfect.
do have this pop-up that keeps coming and I can't figure out how to get rid of it. So if you guys see this little pop, if anyone knows how to get rid of this thing as they were going on because it's bothering you, put it in the chat. Ooh, maybe this is an answer. Okay. Thanks,
Yeah.
Ken. Darn.
You know what? On
But
that note, though, all questions in the Q&A, please. Right. So if you have a question tonight, please drop in the Q&A. Please do not drop it in the chat. But just so we can have a little bit of fun as we get started, while we're introducing ourselves in CAP, if you could put in your student's graduation year and also maybe like what state you're in, and then I'll send it back to you, Dan.
okay, perfect. So yeah, let's um I mean I think some of this you probably went over, last night, but our mission here is kind of to the end of the student debt crisis by empowering families to shop smarter for college. Appeal obviously is a great part of that. Um so a couple things we're going to talk about tonight. When should you appeal? How do you do that strategically? Obviously, to put yourself in the best position to get your desired result. And then what can we do to minimize debt? I think that's kind of the whole goal here. If we can kind of like somehow get through this crazy expense of college without taking on tremendous debt, that would be fantastic. That's kind of what we're trying to help all families with. Now, I would assume, Kevin, most people probably already have their MyCap account set up, but if you haven't, that's really the first place you should start. This is going to be a way for you to input your personal information for both your student as well as your finances. And at this point, it's also going to allow you to upload your award letters. So then you can get basically an evaluation as to whether or not your awards are appeal worthy. So, especially if you've got a 2026 senior, which I think is basically everyone
Yeah.
on the list, right? Yeah. So, you'll see it kind of here in the center, compare awards, appeals, evaluation. Those are going to be a great spot for you to check out at this point where you are in this lovely journey. Um, And in terms of when to appeal, who do you appeal to, should you appeal? Um, I think for the when, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, but I feel like once you have that award letter from the school detailing what they're offering, you can pretty much pull the trigger from there. Obviously, if you don't have the financial aid award letter, this is the pop-up I'm talking about. Um,
Oh, we can't see it on our end.
oh, great. So it's just going to bother me. Awesome. But you can't really appeal the award unless you know what they're offering you. So you got to wait for that financial aid award to be available.
We actually have a timeline on the next slide.
Hmm, oh, well,
Yeah.
boom. So first things first, obviously everyone's behind submitting applications for admissions. I'm sure, since we're all seniors here, all the kids already did that. Ideally, you submitted the financial aid forms probably around the same point in time back in the fall. Um, you may have received some admissions or acceptances, back in August or September, depending if the school was rolling admission or not. So you may have been waiting on or received admission acceptances, months ago, and you may still be waiting on a few schools that won't notify you until the end of March. Um, Typically, if your student is going to receive a scholarship, not all schools do this, but I would say that most are doing it at or around the time of admission. So again, if you got some acceptances back in the fall, you may have already received that or had that scholarship or known about it, for 5 months now. Um, but the financial aid award letter, that's kind of what we're all looking for here, because unlike the scholarship letter, which is just going to detail the merit-based scholarship, the award letter is going to detail everything, not only the scholarship, but any grants, any loans, work study, as well as the cost of attendance of the school. And those, I would say, you still may be waiting on, especially from, I don't know how you feel, Kevin, but I feel like the public schools are a little behind in terms of getting those out compared to the private schools. I feel like are rolling them out a little bit earlier.
I feel
Um,
like it's early this year because the FAFSA and CSS were both on time, which has been the first time in several years.
yeah, right.
But yeah, I feel like it's definitely been earlier this year.
But also don't be surprised, and especially if it's a public school, but some private too, that you may have had an acceptance for months now, and you don't have the award letter. Um, that's nothing to be concerned about because they're probably just delayed. But at the same time, like what I tell my clients is like, listen, if you're concerned because it's also possible the reason you don't have an award letter is because they're waiting on information from you that you didn't know was required. So it never hurts to kind of reach out to the college directly, the financial aid office, and simply ask them for an update. When is the financial aid award letter going to be available, and or are you waiting on anything from me in order to make it available? But after that award letter is available, um, that's when we can start this appeals process. So don't think that, if you have an award letter from a school right now, you can appeal to that school now, maybe even if your student is waiting on a couple others, with the caveat that I wouldn't be appealing to a school unless the student really has a desire to attend there. Um, you're not going to want to appeal to schools maybe to try and get them to come up with more money to show another school. You're only going to want to appeal to schools that the student is actually interested in attending.
I was gonna say that's the missing seventh bullet is it's not after you receive all the financial aid order, you appeal every school. You have to wait till your student knows what school they want to go to, or at least the top two schools they want to go to before you appeal. You last night, I told you earlier, but we promised to give some real life examples. So I'm going to start off with just two real quick, just based on the timeline. Time can be leveraged, right? So like I've done appeals, WPI, LMU, Northeastern, where they failed in February or March, but we were able to get more money from them last 2 weeks of April, right? So timeline in terms of appealing, it could be very, very different depending on the school. And again, it's also going to be very, very different. Some students don't know where they want to go until the beginning of April or middle of April. So it is going to be a little bit different for every family.
Okay, in terms of let me see. Okay, here we go. These are kind of your two basic options. You've either got a merit-based appeal based on a merit-based scholarship, which for the most part is going to be academic based on your kids' grades and scores. That generally is going to be done through the admissions office. A need-based appeal, mom or dad lost their job, like a one-time taxable event, high medical expenses, that sort of thing. That's going to go through the office, the financial aid office. Um, and you can do both, right? I mean, I have a number of clients where, they had a financial change and we're appealing based on that. They also, the kid maybe increased their grades or their scores, something like that, and we're trying to get more money from admission. So I think one key thing to realize through this process, it's not like there's a five-step process to appealing and it's the same timeline, it's the same forms, and it's the same requirements for every university. As you probably found from admissions and financial aid, every school is operating independently on a different timeline. They have different regulations, they have different paperwork. So it's like how Fairfield does with appeals in their process is going to be different than University of Illinois and so on and so forth. So it's like you may not know the exact process and how it's all going to work until you start talking with the school and kind of like get in the weeds with them and understand their process and then what they need from you to kind of reevaluate your situation, so to speak, to see if additional money can be offered. But I think a key point to realize is that you can appeal on both circumstances, both merit and need. Um, and my feeling is, especially for a merit-based appeal, it's typically a lot easier to get the school to offer more money, like increase the scholarship, than it is to offer a scholarship if they've offered nothing to begin with. Not saying that's not possible, but I would say in general, it's a little bit more difficult to get a scholarship if none was offered versus getting it increased.
And like I just actually had a meeting with the client before, and we were talking about an appeal to Baylor. And I think what many families also need to realize is if they're giving you a huge grant and a scholarship, to get a larger scholarship could ultimately result in a lower grant. So it's like you have to know what levers to pull and what approach to take based on the current offer. Because to get a larger scholarship or get more grants, again, they're using those scholarships to meet need. And if there is no more need because the scholarship increases, again, the grant can decrease. So it's important to think through for your family, but also for your school and the current offer. Is merit the right approach or is need based the right approach?
Yeah, and I think another good point to realize is too that, if you're looking for a need-based appeal, they're going off of your net cost of attendance, meaning the cost of the school less the scholarship that they already offered. So it's like if the school cost 80,000 and they gave your kid a $40,000 scholarship, they're looking at their cost to be 40,000. So you kind of need to get your student aid index, so to speak, below that $40,000 number to be successful versus if it's an $80,000 school and no scholarship was offered, well, then you could conceivably like earn more money or have more money and have a higher SAI, but still be successful. So a lot depends on, like Kevin said, the cost of the school, what type of grants and scholarships they offered initially. All of this kind of like plays into the calculation of us trying to figure out, what is the best way to approach the school to get more money. And I think this is one we had in the a question in the chat about 25 returns. So for the 26-27 school year, the base year, the income they were looking at for your FAFSA was 2024. So that's what they went off of. And when they're looking at your income, it's the adjusted gross income. That's the key line item. So that includes your income, interest, dividends, capital gains, IRA distribution, Social Security, everything kind of like funnels into that line item. So that's the key line item they're looking at, and that would be the key line item they're going to look at, obviously, then through an appeals process as well, if there's any changes. But, the benefit to now with the school, the FAFSA changing to looking 2 years back a few years ago is that now you have the benefit of the doubt in terms of if your 2025 income is less than 24's, that's a great reason to be approaching the school and appealing. Um, Now, one of the questions in the chat was, um, do they require your 25 tax return to appeal? And, unfortunately, like everything else, it depends on the school. Some schools will not. I had one school, in terms of real world examples, working with a family who was appealing for Fairfield. Um, they called them up, figured out, everything that they needed. And one of the things that they needed was the 2025 tax return. But this student had applied early decision. So their commitment deadline was coming up and they weren't able to submit the return in time. And I was like, okay, we'll ask either for an extension or see if we can appeal, without the 25 tax documents. So they did. And Fairfield told them, yes, based on the situation, like we'll go off your income estimates for the appeal and we'll review it that way. Then about a week goes by. She hasn't heard anything. She calls back the school, like, hey, can I get an update to kind of see status update on the appeal? And they're like, well, yeah, we're actually waiting on your 25 tax return. And she's like, well, you said that that wasn't going to be required. And they're like, well, actually, it is required. And our rule is once you start an appeal, you have 21 days to finish it or we'll never look at it again. So now they're 10 days into the appeal and they're telling her before you didn't need your return. Now there's 11 days left and she somehow has to have her tax return filed in the next 10 days in February for them to review it. So not really a warm and fuzzy type appeal situation that you can go through, but unfortunately, like that's kind of where you're at with some of these schools. You're beholden to like how they operate, and if they're telling you that, um, in this instance, she got the return done, and we're moving forward, but she unfortunately they didn't really give her any options. So some schools are going to be a lot more flexible in that, but Fairfield in that example, I would say was you know not a fun one to deal with.
Can I add something real quick on the taxes? I'm gonna do a Villanova example. I had a family once come to me after they did an appeal, and it wasn't it wasn't good. They actually hired a company who suggested they appeal, and apparently they accidentally omitted something from their CSS profile. It was an accident, but appeals, they look at tax returns, and they caught it on the tax return. And Villanova, I believe it was a trust or a business, and Villanova took $30,000 in grants away. And I'll just say that family never got that money back. So from an appeal perspective too, you want to keep in mind what documentation you're providing them, what they're looking at, and also like on your financial aid forms if did you accidentally make a mistake, did you not? But taxes are a big part of appeals. So have you ever had anything like that happen before?
I've never had an instance where a school has pulled money back. No.
That they it wasn't again, it wasn't someone who hired us for appeals. It was they hired someone else, they did the appeal, and it
Yeah.
wasn't more money, it was they took 30 away because they found again a trust or a business.
Hmm.
Uh, so it's like again, you gotta know your situation before you start doing the appeals.
Yeah, right. Don't appeal based on a reduction of income if your income's going up,
Sure.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
um, and especially you'll know if they require the 25 tax return before you can even appeal, ideally you're going to be able to compare 24 to 25 and know. And again, keep in mind that the AGI is the key figure. So if your wages went down, but you had other taxable income that kind of made your AGI actually go up, that's not going to put you in a good position.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a couple. Sorry.
I think the answer to the first is yes. I don't know. To me, it's like, why not try? Um,
Totally agree. The worst now outside of your Villanova example,
yeah.
I would say that's I don't want to scare people thinking that like you're going to appeal and they're going to pull money back. That's
No, and I don't
ex
want anyone to be scared and think that because that was a very unique example, but I did see it happen once and I just wanted to share it. But no, I don't want anyone to be afraid to appeal. Again, that's a very, 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 it's the only time I've ever seen it happen to a family. That was a very rare instance.
Yeah, any instance I've ever dealt with, they just reject it, right? You're just left with the original offer that you had. Um, so, and a lot of times what I'll tell people is like you should sometimes I'm like, listen, just appeal almost for peace of mind, knowing that like, listen, I really don't think you're going to get more money out of Indiana University. Um, but if you send this appeal, at least it's going to let you know at the end of the day if your kid goes off there, I did everything that I could. I didn't screw anything up. I didn't leave any money on the table, and this was just the best deal that I could have had. But for sure, your large, popular public universities are going to be the most difficult to work with. I would say there's some exceptions there. Um, schools that I would say are exceptions to that rule will be like Virginia, Michigan, North Carolina, um, maybe Wisconsin, but they kind of changed their methodology this year. I don't know if there's any I'm missing, but for the most part, the public schools are
UVM,
going to be
Vermont.
Vermont. Yeah, I'd say that. Maybe Pitt, but for the most part, figure, especially if it's like a UC or a Cal State school, for the most part, these public schools are going to be really tough because some of them just don't offer grants to anyone. So it's like if you're doing a need-based appeal, they're not going to care if your SAI goes from 40,000 to 20,000 or 50,000 to 10,000. You're going to need to get your SAI into like a Pell eligible type situation or below 6,000 bucks so that they can then give you a federal grant. But for sure, the private schools, much more flexibility, whether it's, the creme de la creme or even just, your standard private schools. I think you're going to find those in general are going to be far easier to be successful with than the public ones. Um, I was just working on one today with, they had to pull money out of their IRA in 2024. They didn't do that in 2025. So it overly inflated their income. One time, any sort of like one-time taxable event, retirement distribution, capital gain, something like that, great reason to appeal, especially if it didn't come into play the next year. Now, again, you make a retirement account distribution for 100,000 in 2024 and you do the same thing in 2025, then that's not going to help you because it's a continual event. So they're not going to look at that the same as if it never happened again. Um, any changes in your marital status, divorce, separated, that sort of thing, another great reason to appeal. Um, and in terms of IM and FM colleges, that relates to IM stands for our institutional methodology. So that means the school is requiring the CSS profile in addition to the FAFSA, whereas the FM or federal methodology, that means the school only required the FAFSA form. So again, for you business owners, you may have reported things differently on the CSS in relation to your business and not on the FAFSA because on the FAFSA you didn't have to report business valuation if you had less than 100 employees. Um, and then, better offers from competing colleges. Again, that I would say that holds true more at the private school level than the public school. But, for sure, if you have better offers elsewhere, the school doesn't necessarily know that. So it's up to you through the appeals process to kind of make them aware of it. Um, and I would also say, well, we're going to get into expenses in a minute, I think, right, Kevin?
Um, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Um, but if you had no financial changes, that's going to be tough. Um, especially at these public schools, I would say, no financial changes, and you just have kind of maybe some better offers from other public schools. I would say in general, those are kind of the hardest cases to win, um, in terms of getting more money out of an appeal. Okay, and now, do you want to take this one?
Sure, sure. All right. So in terms of the process, you were saying before about how, you get the offer, you determine the school. The first step in the process, aside from telling the story, is figuring out the strategy. Right. Once you know the right strategy, you're going to be able, and maybe you appeal to both the Office of Admissions and the Office of Financial Aid, but figure out your strategy first. Now, after you figure out your strategy, you obviously have to put together something very compelling. Now, usually it's a letter. Some schools have forms. You might need to get some supporting documentation. If you've had a change in income, you might have to, prepare a change in income form. But so after you come up with the strategy, you're going to tell that story via how I just said with a letter or statement. Now, Dan and I were just talking before we got on here, and this is a bullet, make a specific ask. And not that we totally disagree with it, and a lot of families do this. And again, if like you really know, hey, I want 5 grand more, that's all I need, and I would be very, very, very content with the $5,000. Great, ask for 5 grand. But and Dan and I were saying, like, we both have the same approach in terms of if you ask, you now limit yourself to 5 grand, right? Or whatever the ask was. And it's like, unless you know for sure how much more you can get, why are you gonna ask? Why are you gonna limit yourself? I mean, we've been doing this a long time. We know. I just did an appeal to Boston University. I thought the family was going to get 10 to 15 grand. They got 22,000, right? And if they had asked for 10 to 15 grand, you wouldn't have given them 22,000. So I really do believe that if you know and you be content, go for it. If you don't and you're unsure, then don't include that. I just did an appeal to Loyola, and they actually came back asking, how much more do you need? Okay, now in that situation, yeah, you should. Have your documentation ready. I actually like to put like packets together almost. So it's like you're prepared, you've got everything ready to go, not multiple documents, not all over the place, but it's just essentially like this appeal package in a way that has all of your supporting documentation attached. And if you have a drop in income, get your taxes done, right? Be prepared to show them the change in income. If you're unemployed and it happened recently, you're going to need things like either COBRA or unemployment letters to show, or a termination letter to show that to them. Students and parents can definitely be involved. I mean, I really believe on the financial side, students can't explain in a detailed way the family's change in circumstances financially. So I always like to have financial aid appeals come from like need based, come from parents, and then maybe a little supporting document from the student. But then I also like to have the scholarship, the merit appeals come from the student, and the parent should not be involved at all. Every college really does have their own process, and they also may have their own deadlines, right? I saw some families ask, is it too late to apply for early decision, appeal for early decision? I said no, but I'll be honest, there is a possibility that the deadline for appeals at that school is passed, and you might have to kind of push to even get the appeal considered. Um, so just check with each school for their own process as well as their own deadlines as you're starting this. Being persistent for sure, right? Dan, you're mentioning how you had the family call Fairfield and follow up. They wouldn't have known there was an issue had they not done that. But you can call, you can follow up, you can check on the status of the appeal, and maybe you're going to have to go back a second time. Maybe you're going to have to go back a third time. And I see this all the time. Actually, someone who hired us back in December for early decision to Muhlenberg, they were going to do an appeal. The mom was going to do an appeal to the Office of Admissions. And it's just the wrong department, the wrong type of appeal. And it was like, they wouldn't have gotten any more money. They ended up getting originally, it was like 6 grand more. I begged them to go back again. Begged them. It took like a week or two for me to convince them to actually go back. And that 6,000 became 20,000. Right. So they went from getting an extra $24,000 to an extra $80,000 from Muhlenberg. So again, you do want to know not only your strategy, but like who's the one doing the appeal, as well as what department you are appealing to. You want to add anything to this slide?
Um, no, I would say the only thing I would say is, I mean, do you feel like, if you send the appeal to the wrong department, I feel like they'll kind of push it to the right one. I'm not as concerned with that. If you get it to the wrong person, I feel like the school's going to forward it to the right department.
Well, what I was saying was a little different. Think of mom doing the merit appeal. So I
Oh,
guess
yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, 100%
oh,
correct. Sorry, I was
oh,
answering questions and
no worries. But like I guess maybe I didn't explain it correctly, but it's like you need to know the type of appeal to know if it's the student or parent doing it and then send it to the right department. But yeah, if like, the parent writes a need-based appeal and you accidentally send it to the Office of Admissions, they're just going to say, send this to this person or send this to, and that, or they'll kick it over, like you're saying, to the right department. Uh,
right.
that was my fault for a bad explanation.
Shame, shame.
I know. I'm sorry, everyone. So valid need-based appeal items. If it's a CSS profile school, uh, think about home equity. That's going to play a really big role. If you've had any major changes, not just major, minor changes in your financial circumstances, absolutely. Think about what's on the financial aid forms, right? And then think about what's not on the financial aid forms. If you have a change in your marital status, first off, I hope if you were married filing jointly in 2024 and were divorced or separated in October when you filed the FAFSA, that you manually split the income and assets. If you didn't, you need to fix that. But also, if your marital status today is different than when you filed the FAFSA, you can absolutely appeal based on that. Medical issues, I would say this and change in income are like the two easiest appeals. Um, obviously they have to be addressed correctly, but like this is such a great reason for an appeal. Medical expenses are a big way for the colleges to reduce income and ultimately, hopefully, get you more grants. Um, if you own a business, there's a few things that could be happening. They could be adding back in business losses. They could be using a business value that you didn't give them. There's different things that colleges do, especially the CSS profile schools that look at tax returns. So usually to some extent, business owners are going to be able to find some reasons to appeal, maybe even fluctuating income. One-time events, think through capital gains, retirement distributions. Maybe you converted a IRA from traditional to a Roth in a year. All of that be appealable. Um, if there's any strain on your monthly cash flow that's not on the financial aid forms, as long as it's legitimate, um, absolutely something that can be included as part of the appeal.
I had one that was, this is kind of, in terms of cash flow, they were, the grandparents are live with, so the parents are kind of supporting their parents or the kids' grandparents. Um, they were receiving like nominal Social Security, but they were kind of covering all their other expenses. Um, and then now their parents need dentures, and they got a quote for, I couldn't believe, like $40,000 was the cost for dentures. I was like, oh
Oh
my
my
God. She's like, should we mention this? I'm like, heck yeah, we should mention this. Um, so, now, because if you're going to go out and buy a new fishing boat, no, that's not going to be like anything that's going to move the needle for them. So you got to think like, medical stuff like that. But that was an example of, especially if you're supporting other family members, I think that's like a hot topic with these schools too.
Real quick with business owners, I'll share an actual example. Princeton, right? This one family came to us in it was in August. They had tried to appeal since May or June on their own. They did three appeals, and their business had a really big value on the business tax returns, and they also had over two or three hundred thousand dollars of depreciation from machinery. That was probably one of the most complex appeals I've done. And because Princeton, the way they look at things, it's kind of you have to be really specific and legitimate in terms of getting them to make a change to a financial aid award. And they went from paying full price. I put it in Slack the other day. I forget what it was, like $94,000. They went from after, and their three appeals that they did on their own rejected, rejected, rejected. Basically, no more money for you. And then the appeal that I did for them, it took 2 months, and it was the final price $42,450. So they ended up getting a little more than 50 grand from Princeton on the appeal. Um, so like business owners, like those, that's a real story. Like that could be happening. So if you have a bad award and you don't know why, take a look at your CSS, take a look at your business tax returns, and take a look at your personal returns. Uh, because that's absolutely could be happening. You want?
Another th
Oh, sorry.
Another thing I want to mention too, because I don't think this, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure if this is on any of the slides, but do we talk about taking on the federal student loan,
We we
or
do.
have we?
I can if we have time tonight, I can add a slide. I can share my screen for a sec where we can spend a minute talking about loans.
Well, I was more saying it from the perspective that I've seen this more and more that schools are requiring the student to take on that loan, the federal student loan, which is $5,500 as a freshman, um, in order to appeal to the school. And I'm seeing that more and more. I used to never see that, but if you think about it, it kind of makes sense, right? Like, oh, you're in need of more money, you can't afford this, but you're not even borrowing the federal student loan. How, desperate can you be, really? So I basically advise everyone, like, listen, if we're going through this process, you need to take on that $5,500 federal student loan. Not guaranteeing it's going to make the appeal successful or not, um, but it's definitely going to put you in a better position. And there is no prepayment penalty on that loan. So you could always just, pay it off at some point down the road, but the school is going to get notified when you take it on. Um, I would say that that's especially true for like as returning students because the school can then see, your junior year if the student took on the loan the previous year. So just something to keep in mind, when you're going through this process in terms of like, trying to make yourself look as needy as possible, so to speak, through these appeals.
That's the key, as needy as possible. This was from,
Oh yeah, what school was this?
this was fun. This was a 6 month appeal. That
And
was
who was this?
Barnard.
What?
They ended
Sorry,
up,
Barnard?
yeah,
Okay. All right,
they ended
everybody, don't go to Barnard
no, I've
or don't
actually
appeal.
seen a lot of money from Barnard. This was a hard one though. This was again 6 months. Made the number one mistake, and they didn't apply for financial aid, which I've actually had a few families who've done that over the years. I just did one of those for Trinity as well. But they didn't apply for financial aid. It was a very lengthy, difficult appeal. If you can see the different items that they asked for. I mean, a cash flow worksheet, and I think we showed it on a presentation before, but you know, how much was it? How much Zyn are they using or whatever? They were asking how much they spent on tobacco, how much they spent on alcohol, how much they spent on the
Oh
lot.
yeah, the tobacco one.
Yeah, the tobacco one. So it was very detailed. And again, this is something that you seriously can expect depending on the complexity and the reasons in your appeal. Very typical tax returns. These additional requirements, it's very unusual. Um, like the copy of all savings and checking account statements for September, October, November, and December. That's very unusual. But again, they anything you say in the appeal, anything that you say, they can ask for some sort of supporting documentation for, which is the case here, which is what happened. But yeah, just be prepared, right? I mean, the reason that we suggest families prepare for appeals isn't because we're trying to stress anyone out or make anyone feel like that. This you can imagine how much time this takes to put together, and depending on your circumstances and the reason for your appeal, it could take a little while to get all of these documents together and also just get the appeal together. So again, there's no harm in starting sooner and getting this figured out.
One thing I wanted to bring up too, because we've had a couple of these in the Q&A is, and some schools will put this like on their appeals paperwork. If your SAI is negative 1,500, which is basically that's as low as it can get, most schools have already offered you the max amount of need-based grants, and they'll say like you cannot appeal because there's just nothing more to give, so to speak. So that's not the case for all schools, but if you do have that negative 1,500 SAI, um, more than likely there's not anything more that you can do from a need-based appeal standpoint.
I feel like a lot of public schools have that. Um,
Yep. Because they know, reason being, I personally, especially if it's a school that doesn't give any institutional grants, their point is like, well, we already gave you the 73.95 Pell, which is the max. Like, you can't get any more than that. Let's not waste our time.
yeah,
So
really
that definitely possible. Um,
because the SAI can't go lower than that. So again, there's no real room there.
was this one yours?
No, this I can talk through it, but this one wasn't mine.
I'll do the NYU one, but if you want to take these, because I didn't have
Yeah,
these
yeah,
were
sure.
mine.
No, this one wasn't mine, but this was Occidental in California. A lot of home equity. The family had a ton of home equity, and home equity is a really big. If you address it correctly, it could be a really successful appeal. And obviously, it has to be a school that uses home equity, right? You're not going to do a home equity appeal to MIT because they don't even use it. Well, at least the equity in your primary home. Um, but so Occidental, you can see the amount that they gave here. Focus on the $21,787 in grants, right? That's what you're going to see change. That's what's based on need. The scholarship, 12,500 was based on the student's academics. And then the rest is loans and work study. I do want to point out that that low interest loan from Occidental, I feel like I've seen quite a few colleges do that over the years. It could be subsidized, it could be very low interest during school, so it could be a good option. But um, obviously it's a loan; it has to be paid back potentially with interest. But as you were saying before, someone asked a question in the chat about, or sorry, the Q&A about taking the loan. Like, I would check the box yes to federal work study. I would check the box yes to the subsidized loan and check the box yes to the unsubsidized loan, even the low interest loan, if I knew that I was getting ready to do an appeal. Because you want to make it look like you're taking what they're giving you. And they could say the appeal is contingent on you accepting all of those things. But again, so the basis for this appeal was specifically home equity. And do you want to go to the next slide so they can see the after? So originally 34 grand in gift aid, and then after, and you'll see that that grant is the one that really increased. It increased to 49,000. Can you click so it shows the after result? One more. Yeah. 62 grand in gift aid. Right. So a huge $28,000 increase in free money solely because of home equity. For the colleges that use home equity, it could really impact your financial aid award. I'll do this one too. So this was a BU appeal, and they originally got nothing, and they were getting ready to tell their student no, to basically say you can't go to BU, and that would have been pretty devastating for this particular student. They only got a loan, $3,500. I do want to point out, and we talked about this yesterday too, but I do want to point out they didn't even give them the full $5,500. And if your plan is to use the federal direct student loan, sometimes you do have to ask for it. So, like in this case, this family could have gone back to BU and said, "Hey, we also want the additional $2,000." But a total cost last year of 90 grand, and it took a lot of work. Do you want to go to the next slide? It took a lot of work to get this, but we did a couple of different appeals, and on the first appeal, they got $28,800. And this family had rental properties, they had business income, they had a small one-time installment sale income, multiple kids in college. So we had to address all of those things and then some. And the first appeal, 28,800, it would have left BU still around 60 grand a year, which given the circumstances, I literally just knew was not fair. It wasn't, they didn't give them enough money. So we had to push. We went back a second time. And once again, had to convince, I'm in the process now of convincing, I think, three families to go back a second time. It's okay to ask for more. There's nothing wrong with it. The schools won't necessarily get upset. But had to convince this family to ask a second time. We were able to do it. And that second appeal, an extra 16 grand. So a total of $45,000. I'm rounding. But what's really great about BU, and I honestly think BU from an appeal perspective, they're efficient, they're easy to deal with. I really respect and appreciate how BU handles appeals. But that being said, the 45 grand, it's guaranteed for 4 years. You can see that BU scholarship assurance. So they literally just saved 180 grand. And they were also given work study in addition to the $3,500 loan. So a really good outcome, right? I mean, again, 180 grand in savings, 45,000 just by addressing the right items in the right way on appeal. I think the next one is you, right?
Let's see. It was a very unique situation.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, this was. So, um, this was for this year. So maybe first we should just let NYU's costs sink in there for a second and make sure none of our kids want to go here. But so this was a family who applied early decision to NYU. They were parents were divorced, and the father, the mom was a custodial parent. Kid lives with the mom. She's providing the support. Um, and the ex-husband, like not really much of a relationship there, and he was actually living out of the country. But they went through this process. They were told he had to fill out the non-custodial profile. She wasn't really aware that a non-custodial profile waiver existed. So, She submitted her information, her FAFSA, her CSS, and then her ex submitting his non-custodial profile. And then when she got the award, she's like, wow, this isn't nearly as much as I was thinking we would get based on my income and assets. Um, and we determined that obviously it was because her ex's finances were taken into account. Um, Without getting into kind of the nitty-gritty details, the dad was not really that much involved in the student's life, and not really a great relationship there, and kind of really shouldn't have been involved in her life based on some things that happened after she was accepted. So we went back to them and we had to show them a lot of supporting documentation showing that, like, hey, here's why there isn't a relationship between the student and her father, and why they really should qualify for a non-custodial waiver because dad's information should not be taken into account. He's not involved with her life, nor is he going to be involved in any of the financing of school. Now, usually when Kevin and I are doing that, we're getting these waivers uh, approved so that the ex-spouse isn't filling out the forms. Not they filled them out and then we're trying to claw it back later. So, but anyway, the good news is, we went back, we made this argument, as you can see, we were able to get substantially more money in terms of grants. 31,400 was the increase that they were able to receive based on the appeal. Obviously, again, that's kind of a unique situation. But again, a lot of people have unique situations. So I think that's kind of the whole point. A lot of your situations, you're just not going to be able to put on this fast for the CSS form. So that's why we got to appeal directly to the school, where you can kind of write a letter, explain everything, and then see if that moves the needle. There were some questions in the Q&A too, I noticed about multiple kids in college. Um, the federal methodology no longer takes that into account for the FAFSA. They stopped doing that a couple years ago, but it's a great reason to appeal. Now, they may not take it into account, but some still will. You just kind of have to ask. So it's kind of one of those things you're never really going to know until you ask them. But in my mind, that's a fantastic reason to appeal. Or if, like someone said, they're still paying off college loans for one of their kids, or if you've still got, student loan debt that you're paying as again, these are expenses that you need to point out to the university. They're not all going to take it into account. Again, you make this same appeal with Occidental or whatever the other school was before, you're going to get a different result. They're all looking at this differently. So, and the worst they're going to do is say no. So it's like in my mind, you might as
Literally
well.
the worst they're going to do. It's like they're not going to change the offer. They're not going to rescind your student's acceptance. They're not going to do anything aside from saying no.
Yeah, I will say too, just to clarify something we said earlier about the negative 1500 SAI, because someone put in the Q&A, um, if you have the negative 1500 SAI and you're going to a school that only requires the FAFSA, those are the ones that you may not be able to appeal for more, even if you lost your job or something like that. If it's like a school like USC or one that requires the CSS profiler institutional methodology, those you still have a chance because again, they're not looking at that FMSAI, or they could be looking at assets or other things that are inflating that number well above negative 1500. So again, for the most part, that negative 1500 you can't appeal. That's only for the FAFSA only type schools.
One more thing, real quick. This is guaranteed for 4 years. Another school that does that.
I know,
Uh,
crazy.
yeah. So
I mean, I used to hate NYU. I've had some more success with them, I would say, lately, but they are not easy to deal with, especially in this case. Like,
no,
we couldn't even get a hold of someone to like, where do we send this appeal? And like, you fill out.
they've
That's
got
the most frustrating thing is like, some of these schools. I had another client earlier today, or someone I met with that was trying to appeal through Temple, and they're like, I just gave up because no one would reply to me, and I just couldn't figure out how to do it.
like
So,
they make it purposely hard, right? I think in some cases, like NYU's is really tough. You have to go on their website and you have to do this, that, you have to get it approved. Yeah. And there's no one's contact information. And you call NYU's financial aid office, they'll make you wait on the phone for 2 hours.
so one time she got on, and I think it was like 970 hours or something is what the automatic thing said. So we had it. Luckily she was able to like we found individuals' names and like just CC'd like the whole department, like, please, someone just reply to us and tell us where we send this. Um, but luckily it all worked out at the end of the day, but for sure I was getting nervous.
Yeah. Um, Want me to take this one?
Sure.
Okay. I think this one's a good example of how sometimes assets are appealable, right? And in this specific example, the client became disabled. And unfortunately, they lost essentially half their income, permanently disabled. That income was never coming back. So now that $1.5 million nest egg that they had, that was their support. That was their retirement. That was their lifeline. That was going to help pay bills, help supplement income. And that was the appeal, right? And they essentially increased the grants by $22,000 because of that. Now, clearly, they did not remove all of the assets or anything like that because of that, but it definitely helped, and right, and it definitely made a difference in terms of the cost. Do you want to go to the next one? Syracuse made the New York Times last year. Um, so Syracuse is also it really does bother me in some ways how they make families fight for it. I've done a bunch of appeals this year where the families were initially discouraged. They're even discouraged because Syracuse said they're not doing appeals, so they were hesitant to hire us, but they still did. And I think 20 and 30 grand so far are the two outcomes that I've had. But Syracuse last year, it was known like they made the New York Times. This particular family got nothing from them, and we did a merit appeal. Could you click so it shows extra 60 grand a year? They saved $240,000. So that's a really, I think it took 5 appeals, but that's a big outcome. Do you want to go to the next one? I want the next slide. I actually want to point this out, and we tried making it bigger so everyone could see this. But you know how you were just saying, Dan, about how some schools treat appeals differently. This Colby appeal, where the family got an extra $74,000, that was one that I did. But Colby gave them an extra 74,000. Wesleyan gave them an extra 74,000. Middlebury gave them nothing aside from Pell. It was an extra $7,395. And again, exact same appeal. So schools can handle and treat appeals differently. They can view the information on your CSS profile differently. So just know that, right? Know that every school is going to look at things very differently, and you could potentially have very different outcomes. But over, we stopped counting after 5 million. I know we hit over 6 million last year on appeal, and this year, so far, we're over 1 million. And that's largely with just early decision families. But over $1 million so far this year that we've saved on appeal. If I had to bet this year, I'll set a goal for us of 10 million, but I don't know if we're going to get there or not. But that would be amazing if we did get to 10 million. But you can see here, even the largest appeals, right? I mean, that's a life-changing amount of money, but even the smallest appeals like Arcadia and LMU and some of these others here, extra 2, 3 grand a year. I mean, that's what, 8, 12 grand that they just saved by appealing. And that adds up over time. So you'll see public schools on this list, like University of Pittsburgh. You'll see Arizona State University. And then you'll see private schools. You'll see Rutgers, Michigan, and then you'll see a College of Charleston. But then you'll also see Syracuse. You'll also see SLU. You'll also see Trinity, right? So just a wide range of the schools and outcomes. And, again, appeals are a very important part of this process. Um, so I don't know if you want to add anything here. I know a lot of these were yours as well.
The only one I'd add is Colby. I mean, because you mentioned them, and they're one where I had a client this year does not qualify for financial aid. Um, Kid wanted to apply early decision to Colby. I was like, okay, just that's fine, but you're gonna be full pay. Um, Kid gets in, then he loses his job. He still does this person, his financial situation was such that even with no income, he wasn't going to qualify for grants. I was like, all right, we should appeal. Like, we need to appeal just in case, like, just to, cover our bases, so to speak. Send the appeal. Um, sends back, gives the kid an extra $20,000 a year fixed over the 4 years. So basically $80,000. Usually, if you're getting like a need-based appeal, it's going to be like a one-time deal, probably just for the freshman year. But Colby, I have no idea why they did this. He didn't, like, by the numbers, did not deserve it based on the financial aid calculations. But in essence gave them 20,000 a year or 80,000 over the 4 years. So just another example of, you never know what's going to happen. What's the downside of letting the school know you lost your job or whatever that change is.
For sure. It's definitely just another part of the process. It will not hurt the admissions decision. It is not something that you need to worry about. You do not need to feel like the school is going to give you a hard time or not let your student go there or not like you. I will say this, if you have a really, really, really bad experience appealing, probably is not going to get better. And college is a 4-year deal. You really do want to think through that, right? To think through, did we have a good experience? Was the financial aid office easy to deal with? How was all of that before your student commits to spending the next 4 years somewhere? But want to add anything here before I share my screen?
Yeah, no, totally agree. Like if you're having a bad experience, like don't think they're going to that's going to change moving forward. Um, because once you're enrolled, think about that, how much, then there's even less of a reason for them to start giving you more money. So, I tell people all the time, like, listen, this is what we got the first year. Like, you need to be prepared. We're going to get this the next three. Don't think like we were unsuccessful appealing this year. We're going to run back the same argument years two, three, and four and get a different result. That's just not realistic in most cases.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, sorry. Do you need me to stop sharing?
Yeah, it's okay. I'll share my screen too. Um, so for anyone on last night's call, you know that we essentially ran out of availability. We want to make sure everyone knows, like, do you have a good chance of appeal? People were writing in Indiana, Alabama, but then also some other schools, and like we'll very quickly tell you if you have essentially a good or bad chance at appealing. You do have to book that appeal assessment tonight. We're not going to extend the deadline to book or anything like that, but we did have to extend the deadline to meet with us because of availability. So now we did extend the deadline all the way to 3/7. So you have to meet with us before then. So we've got some times here next week. But last night, they literally went in 5 minutes. So I would encourage, if you do want to talk to us to determine if you do or don't have a case for an appeal, and then maybe also talk about how we help, please book that now. In addition to that, if you want us to help with this process, maybe one, you've already met with us and you're considering it. Maybe two, you're going to meet with us to talk about it. Well, one, we're giving a discount. The discount is good until the day you meet with us, right? So if you meet with us 3/6, it'll be good until the night of 3/6. We originally were not planning on offering the discount past 3/1, but again, because of our fault with availability, we did extend that as well. But let's say that you've been hesitant to get started and you're ready to go. I would really encourage moving forward now. Dan, I know your availability. You're what, 3 or 4 spots left?
Not many.
I think, I mean, I, Mike Hunsberger on our team, his last spot just went away. Mike Hinderman on our team only has 2 spots.
I think I had five today, and then I have three now. I want to say at
Yeah.
the beginning of the.
Col-
So yeah,
Collectively as a team, we have less than 20 spots as of right now for appeals for the rest of the year. Right. So that's on us to hopefully figure out. But seriously, we do not have a lot of availability left. Most of our pros, like JP, is only taking, I think, 3 more. I mentioned Mike Hinderman with 2. Um, yeah, I think you're at 3. I'm only going to take another 3 or 4, and that's it for me. So we really don't have a ton of availability left. So either one, if you've been on the fence and you do want us to help you with this process, now is a great time to get started. Or two, if you don't know, you want to talk about what we offer and even determine if you can or can't appeal, well, obviously book the appeal assessment so we can talk through it. And you can see here there's still plenty of time tomorrow, and then there's also plenty of time, which you can see here, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But I will drop this link in the chat because I just realized I have not dropped it so far. And then why don't we take 1 or 2 questions and then we'll call it a night. I Everyone see the link I just dropped? Maybe a thumbs up just to let me know that you see it. That'll have everything on there. That'll also have the link to, okay, good. Thank you. That'll also have the link to sign up for our premium software. So if you're going to do this on your own and you want to leverage the tools in MyCap. Yesterday, JP and I spent some time going through it, showing you how to upload the awards and everything else. You can only put 3 schools in the free version, so you would need to upgrade, and there's the link to do that as well. And then in the next day or so, the recordings will be here too. But again, I would definitely suggest either one, talking with us, or two, if you're like, everything you guys talked about tonight sounds like my situation. I need your help appealing Syracuse, Trinity, but whatever school it is, and you're ready to get started, you can also pull the trigger to make sure that we still have availability left. Okay, want to take a question, then we'll call it a night.
Sure. Um, well, how about this one? Do you offer a money back guarantee?
On our full financial aid package, we don't offer it on the appeals package, but every single family, and this is even on here, and this is we took, I can't even tell you how much time. I remember having to go through and put the actual client names and the awards, the initial, the after, to come up with these actual numbers. Like, this is a lot of our time putting this on a spreadsheet and breaking them down. Last year, the average family saved almost 47 grand across all 4 years, and that's almost a 23x ROI, which if you actually turn that into a percentage, it's over a 2,000% return on their initial investment. You can see some comments here about us, but this is my favorite fact, and this is something that we're super proud of. Every single person who we talked to who said, we're going to give you a good outcome last year, who did an appeal assessment, 100% of those families saved more than what they paid us. So again, we're providing not just help on appeals with this, we're also providing helps on private scholarships. We're also providing helps on loans and guidance on how to pay for college. So we're giving ourselves the tools to save you more. But no, as of today, maybe we'll come back with something. But as of today, there's no guarantee on that.
I
Feels
think the good point to bring up there too is that, the reason we're being so successful is because we're also meeting with you before you're signing up. So
yeah,
it's like if you're coming to us and you don't have a great argument for an appeal, I'm going to be like, don't buy the like we're not going to get you this is not going to work out, and we're going to
yeah,
be brutally honest with you. So, we're only telling people to purchase the package if we
we can
feel
help.
confident that we're going to get you more money. If you come to us with, Indiana and, Purdue and a merit-based appeal, I'm going to be like, just write the letter yourself. Like no one's going to be successful, right? So, that's a big part of this too. We're going to be able to, in that 15 minutes, really be able to tell. It doesn't really take much longer than that, quite honestly, to get your information and know the schools and then know what our chances are.
We collectively as a team do hundreds of appeals a year. I mean, I don't know the exact number from last year, but it a significant amount. And we know that, but also we've got what 20 plus pros on our team. We're able to ping ideas off each other. We're able to drop in our channels. Did you appeal here? What reason did you use? Was it successful? Was it not? So like we've got folks on our team who currently work in financial aid offices. So we know the levers to pull. We know the reasons that work, which is I think a really big reason as to why you see these numbers that you see. And like I was sharing a story the other day where a family tried, they were a DIY family, totally appreciate that, but they tried doing this on their own for St. Louis University. Then they hired us. Their first kid, we got just under $38,000 on appeal for them. But the second student, they hired us for the whole process. They're like, we're never going to do this again on our own. And they saved over $300,000 from Vanderbilt with our help. And I promise you, they would not have done that without our help. And it's like, we know those things. We know those reasons. We know what works and what doesn't work at the schools. And we have the experience. We even know who to send appeals to, like at what person at that particular school has given a good result. So we really do have all of those tools at our disposal. I'm just curious to see how much time is left because I've been hearing a lot of okay, there's still a decent amount of time left. So still some time to grab from. We did our best. We extended that deadline as long as we could. And again, if you do want to work with us, we will honor this until the day you meet with us. So well, sorry, I went on. Let's grab a question, then call it a night. We are well over time. Um, can you appeal your estimated offer? Most financial aid offers say estimated. So they're often going to say estimated until you get the final bill in July. I mean, some of the schools haven't even determined or set, especially for the public universities in certain states, they haven't even set that tuition rate. So yes, you can appeal an estimated offer and know that your offer may still say estimated all the way until you get the final bill. Um, I'll drop the direct link to schedule once more, and hope everyone enjoyed tonight. Hope we were helpful. And Dan, thanks for letting me do this with you instead of
Oh,
Tom.
you're welcome, Kevin. You're so welcome.
I
Do
didn't.
they get a recording of this? I can't, was this recorded or no?
Yeah, this was recorded
Okay. Because we had a couple questions about that. So they should get the recording automatically then, right?
automatically. If you don't get it for some reason, give us like a day. If you don't get it for some reason, just reach out to support@collegeaidpro.com, and our Eileen, she's amazing. She will get back to you. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you guys so much. Good luck with this process, and definitely don't wait if you do want to talk to us or if you do want to help. All right. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys. Good night.